It's California Edition. My name is Brad Pomerance. We are joined by Paul Zellerbach. He is the district attorney for Riverside County. Sir, I have a friend. He's a very significant news personality. And a couple of years ago, he told me a story that was just devastating. His mother had been called, and the individual indicated that, "Grandma, it's me, your grandson." Allegedly, my friend's brother's child. "I'm in Mexico. I came down here for vacation. I'm in jail. You need to wire $5,000 or they're not going to let me out." And she wired $5,000.
We see that all the time, especially now during the holiday season. These scam artists come out in droves. Sometimes you get an email, sometimes you get a phone call. It's happened to me. I've gotten emails. My sister-in-law was in Europe, and she got in a terrible car accident and needed me to send money for medical care. So people are susceptible to that, especially the elderly.
And it's so crushing because what this individual did is he preyed on this woman. "Don't call my dad. I don't want him to know I got in trouble. This needs to be between us." And sure enough, she sends the money and then she calls dad.
Well, it's very convincing. Who knows how they acquire this confidential personal information about your family members and things of that nature, but they're able to do that.
And public knowledge, Chelsea Clinton's father-in-law, he was a victim of one of those Nigerian email scams in the 90s, and he got so sucked into it that he wound up being held criminally responsible.
Well, we see those all the time, and we're more sensitive to that, but when it's a family member, we want to act quickly, and we're more susceptible, especially, again, the seniors, because the seniors, they're so trusting, and they want to believe people.
So what should we do to protect ourselves, our parents, our great aunts and uncles? What do we do?
And it's friends as well.
Right. Friends, of course.
But the thing is, don't act quickly. When someone needs money right now, that should be a clue that step back, call a family member, call a friend, look into it, call the law enforcement, call the DA's office.
Call an embassy? Would that be appropriate?
I wouldn't even call an embassy.
That's too far
removed. My office, the DA's office in Riverside County, we've received dozens of these types of complaints over the last couple of years.
So what would happen if a grandmother called your office and said, "I just got a call from my grandson. I'm not sure if this is legit." What would you do? What would your office do?
What we do normally is we track the information, get as much details as we can, and then we send it off to the Federal Trade Commission, because oftentimes this is a national, if not international issue, and they're scamming people not only across California, across the nation, and sometimes across the world.
Are people caught? Are the perpetrators found in these types of instances?
On occasion they are, but it takes a lot of time and effort and investigation. And these people, they hit quickly and then they move on.
And there's no way to reverse that transaction?
No way.
The banks will not allow you to say I was a victim of fraud?
No, because oftentimes they want you to wire the money. So you go wire the money to a particular
Western
location.
Union,
exactly.
Okay, here's a scam I did not know existed, and it is chilling because so many of us do not fulfill our civic responsibility. We get those jury duty summons and we ignore them. And so here's a scam that I have a feeling some people I know may fall for. Why don't you tell us about the jury duty scam?
This is one of the newer ones that we're seeing. Because so many people, as you put it, don't follow their civic responsibilities and go to jury duty, courts oftentimes do issue arrest warrants for people that don't show up pursuant to the court summons. And so what these scammers do is they'll find out who didn't show up, and they'll call you.
How? Is this public record or is it inside job?
Well, it's public record as far as people getting summoned, but who doesn't show up, I don't know how they get that information. Somehow they do, and they'll contact that person and say, "A warrant has been issued for your arrest. You need to send X number of dollars, we'll recall the warrant." We had one situation where the scammer even agreed to meet the individual outside the courthouse and got the cash.
And they did it? I mean, they were that brazen.
They were that brazen, and this person paid that person that money right outside the courthouse doors, before they reported it to us after the fact.
So talk to us about what should happen if you're a jury duty scofflaw, which many of us are?
Well, no one is ever contacted over the phone or by email if you don't show up for court. Now you receive a summons in the mail. Oftentimes you have to call in a number to find out if you're supposed to come in or not. But no one is going to access your private information. No one's going to call you personally. No one's going to ask for money, certainly.
Right.
And so when those things start happening, you should know it's fraudulent and report it immediately.
Well, as long as we're on the subject, what is the punishment for ignoring a jury duty summons?
Having been a judge for 11 years
Yes,
myself.
you do know.
I do know. Normally you're in contempt of court.
Okay.
And the court will assess a fine or a fee of some sort rather than incarcerate you or have you go to jail.
Now, I know there are some courts, and I'm not sure if Riverside is one of them, so help me out, where it's one day in a jury or you're done.
Correct.
And is that now a statewide mandate?
It is. In Riverside County, we faithfully adhere to that. You have a one-day jury service unless you're actually selected for a
Right,
jury
of course.
panel.
And I got to tell you, I've actually been on a jury. Now, maybe I'm that guy, but I thought it was fascinating.
Well, I'm on jury duty right now.
Come on. Well, let me ask you this. I mean, we're getting off topic, but I have to ask. So, voir dire is happening. Voir dire is the process whereby the attorneys
Question the prospective jurors.
They look in the jury box, and there's a double take. There's, the DA.
Correct.
Do you get voir dired, or are you, a peremptory challenge? I'm going back to my law school days.
Usually the minute that I walk into a courtroom, the attorneys stipulate to my excusal.
Is that proper?
I don't think it's proper. When I was a judge, I had other judges who were summoned to my courtroom to serve as jurors, and the attorneys wanted to excuse that judge. And I said, no, that person's a judge. They can be absolutely fair. They're fair every day. And I refused to excuse that judge.
And so what happens? They have to use one of their challenges?
One of their peremptory challenges to excuse that individual.
So have you ever been selected to be a juror?
I never have. I've never even gotten seated in the jury box, unfortunately. I'd love to sit as a juror. It'd be fascinating, as you indicated.
What can we do? Again, I just want to go there because it was such a positive experience for me. To encourage, to explain to our fellow citizens that it really is an important process.
Well, it is important because our justice system demands that people have a right to a jury trial in a criminal case, and that requires people to serve as jurors. But I'll tell you, in my 11 years as a trial court judge, every time a juror didn't want to serve as a juror, and they ultimately got selected and sat through a trial, they loved the experience and were glad that I didn't excuse them.
But what's interesting is, for me, the trial in which I sat was a civil matter. I will admit that if I had been selected for a criminal matter, I may have been spooked.
Spooked in what sense?
Well, you are literally deciding the fate of someone's life, their freedom. And that's scary.
Well,
That's scary.
Again.
And forgive me, I'm not trying to discourage people, but you've heard it.
I have heard it time and again, but jurors need to appreciate and understand they're not deciding punishment at all. They're deciding whether or not there was sufficient evidence to establish that someone committed an act, a crime. That's it. The sentencing then goes to the expert, the judge, much later down the line.
Which is great encouragement. Are you able to convey that encouragement to jurors? Because look, I went to law school. I was a lawyer for several years. I don't know if I've even thought of it that way.
You have to think of it that way because that's actually how it works. Now, the difficult concept is when you sit in a capital case,
Right,
because then you are deciding penalty or punishment.
But you're making technically a recommendation to the judge?
You're rendering a verdict. The judge can reverse it and sit as a 13th juror and review that verdict, but you're making a verdict.
Fascinating. His name is Paul Zellerbach. He is the DA for Riverside County. My name is Brad Pomerance, and this is California Edition.